home can be a safe haven, or it can be hell, a prison or paradise, but there are always shadows tucked in the corners, secrets in the floorboards, stories in the dust patterns on empty, frameless walls. But what happens when something invades your home and shatters that illusion of safety? What happens when your home takes on a life of its own? What happens when the walls breathe? What happens when the walls bleed? To answer that question, I'm going to take you behind these walls. The sun had long set on Atlanta, Georgia by the time 77-year-old Minnie Winston stepped into the shower of her home at 1114 Fountain Drive. For the last 22 years, she had lived at this residence with her husband of 44 years, William Winston. William was asleep in the other room while Minnie showered, but was awoken by the sound of his wife telling him to come look at what was on the floor. And what was on the floor certainly warranted investigation, as when Minnie stepped out of the shower, she was met with the sight of blood. Blood on the floor, and down the halls, and in the living room. With each new threshold she stepped through, it seemed a certainty. Blood in the kitchen, under the television, in the basement, and even in an inaccessible crawl space. The size of the pools ranged from droplets to silver dollars, and in some spots it was streaked. All within the time frame of a single shower, the Winstons' home went from peaceful and safe and comforting to nightmarish. So they did what any sane person would do in this situation. They called the police and hoped for answers. Richard Price was one of the officers on the scene and said most of the blood was on the floors and the walls, and the officers theorized it might have been from a wounded animal. Now, the Winstons' house was free of pets and pests such as rats, mice, and cockroaches, so law enforcement said it was possible that an injured animal got into the house. Despite its appearance, though, Minnie said when she stepped out of the shower she was not afraid. I didn't know where it was coming from. It didn't look like blood, and it didn't smell like blood. While Minnie seemed a little shaken afterwards, William seemed much less so, saying, "My wife is upset because she doesn't know where it's come from. Me, I'm not bothered by it because I'm in bad enough shape as it is." Bad for Mr. Winston meant he needed frequent hemodialysis due to kidney issues, and he could often be found in bed attached to a dialysis machine, which requires blood. That being said, there was no mention of Mr. Winston's machine in any official report, and it is unknown if this was false reporting by the press or if the police simply didn't see it as significant. Detective Steve Cartwright was also one of the officers working the case. He recalls after walking through the blood-riddled hallways and coming away without an explanation that he had been on the force for 10 years, and he'd never seen anything like this. Still, the substance was convincing enough to the police for them to take a sample to be tested, and even though no crime occurred, the police did mark off the house as a crime scene in order to keep the press away. Unfortunately for the Winstons, they were hounded all night by calls and knocks at the door from people wanting to know more about the blood in the walls. But everyone was also eagerly awaiting the results from the state crime lab that would answer the question, was it really blood? Not long after the state crime lab received the sample of blood from the Winstons' home, they announced that it was, in fact, human blood, and it was type O. So why does this matter? Well, it matters because both Minnie and William had blood type A, and if the blood didn't belong to either resident of the house, whose blood was in the Winstons' home? While the officers did take a sample at the scene, there was some criticism from the state crime lab concerning the department's handling of the blood. Since the investigators thought that the blood was from an animal, they originally sent it to Memorial Hospital first, before the state crime lab was even notified. The state said that if they'd received the blood sooner, they could have gathered much more information on the race, sex, or if there were traces of drugs or alcohol in the person's system. But, alas, the only detail they could extract was the species and blood type. So we're still left wondering, where did it all come from? Since we humans are curious creatures, there has been much speculation as to what exactly happened on the night of September 8th, including by Minnie Winston herself. Minnie is adamant that the substance wasn't blood. She has said, "I still don't believe it's human blood. I don't care what the police say." Mr. Winston also rejects himself as the culprit of the blood, even though his hemodialysis machine requires it. Author Kurt Rowlett was granted an interview with Minnie Winston about the incident. Even years later, after the confirmation that it was real blood, Rowlett says that Winston insists it was rust and mud mixed with water, caused by a ruptured hot water heater in the basement spraying steam into the house. All this despite the scientific conclusion that it was in fact human blood. When Rowlett asked her if she thought her house was haunted, she would give no direct answer. There are those out there who place blame on the paranormal for this particular case, a poltergeist or a spirit entity as being the source of the blood. But sometimes there is a simpler explanation. A group called the Georgia Skeptics interviewed Lieutenant Walker, one of the detectives who worked the case. Walker believed that someone intentionally vandalized the home with blood as a hoax, citing family problems. He pointed to the fact that Mr. Winston had access to blood as a kidney dialysis patient, and hinted the possibility he had some motive in order to gain his children's attention. But he also mentioned something that the media didn't seem to catch wind of. The Winston's daughter worked in a place where she had access to human blood, and this was not mentioned anywhere in the initial investigation. Walker also theorized further that the children might have hoaxed their parents to have them declared incompetent with the hope of financial gain. Not much detail was given about these speculations, but Walker mentioned that they didn't pursue the case further for a couple of reasons. There was no violent crime that could be detected by anyone involved, and pursuing further might place the family's situation, whatever that may have been, in the eye of the public, and they didn't feel it necessary to take it that far. It is important to remember, of course, that this is all based on speculation. The only facts we have are that there was blood found in the home and that it was in fact human blood type O, and that neither Minnie nor William Winston had the same blood type. So while I hate to leave the door open on this one, it seems that we will never truly know what occurred in the Atlanta House of Blood, and the walls will keep their secrets. I'd like to thank you all for watching the video, and if you liked it, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and share it with your friends. It really helps me out a lot. You guys have been doing awesome with that, so thank you so much and keep it up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why not? If you like creepy stuff, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because there's always more creepy stuff on the way from me. And before I go, I would like to draw your attention to a little thing called Shadowcast. Shadowcast is a podcast released every Saturday, hosted by Rob Dyke and co-hosted by yours truly, myself, where we cover all manner of creepy things, and you definitely don't want to miss out the last 2 episodes, and you don't want to miss out on this coming week's episode, so be sure to give that a listen. Links will be in the description. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next video. Until then, look for me in your nightmares. Good night.